I honestly don't know when I'm gonna post this video, and this is one of those things because my foundational black Americans were clowning this. I originally wasn't going to say anything, but at this point, I just can't resist because this, when I first heard of this scam, I just thought this Nigerian American woman, emphasis on Nigerian American because people are trying to lump her with us, let's be honest. While she is black American, because I think she was born in the United States, she is not a foundational black American, African American, or American descendant of slaves, okay? And this factors into why FBA, ADOS, and AA people are laughing at her. I got some laughs out of this, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it. But in all actuality, it's sad for someone to have that much going on for themselves and lack that much self awareness, okay? So, this video is gonna be fairly boring in comparison to the rest of them because I'm going to give you some breakdown into monarchies so in the future you're not getting scammed by these people, and you can understand that if you do a little rudimentary research, you're gonna know someone's lying to you. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot more royal families in the world than are recognized by, I guess, whatever bodies recognize royal families. But I'm gonna give you a little bit of the basics of knowing the difference between them all. Years ago, I was on a royal forum where we discussed royal families, and I can remember that's when King Gyanendra of Nepal was ousted, and that has been many years ago. Okay, so you all know about the Danish deception, and I am going to talk about that. But first, I want to touch base on the three types of monarchy, and as well as get into some rudimentary stuff about the monarchy of Denmark and why knowing this stuff could have easily put this to the side. Before I do, on the screen, this image here, this is what's called the Kongen Huset. This is the official web page of the Danish royal family. You see off to the left, dressed in full regalia, is King Frederick X. He is the current constitutional monarch of Denmark. And off to the side, the other lady is his aunt, Princess Benedicte. His mother, Queen Margrethe, abdicated in his favor, and he became the king in 2024. In Denmark, if you abdicate, you can still keep the crown, you can keep the title of queen, but she's not the figurehead in the face like himself and his wife, Queen Mary. We'll get into that a little bit later. So this is the Kongen Huset. If you do a Google search, a rudimentary Google search, the first page of Google will always show a royal family's page. And here for Denmark, it is the Kongen Huset, if I'm pronouncing that correctly for anybody Danish that's listening. So, without further ado, we're going to get into the three types of monarchy. I'm going to first start with elective monarchs. Elective monarchs usually take on a religious component. So basically, you are elected to be the head of some organization, usually religious. So for Rome, the current elective monarch as of this year, because he took over for Pope Francis, is Pope Leo, the first American pope. And of course, for the Coptic Orthodox Church in Alexandria, Egypt, that would be Pope Tawadros II. He's the 118th Pope of that church. So he's been around longer than Leo, obviously. He's the current one. Okay? Basically, an elective monarch is usually a religious leader with different kind of churches throughout the world in different places that have different practices. We know the Catholic Church is all over the world. So as the elective monarch of the Catholic Church, Leo is going to do quite a travel. The Orthodox Church is hardly just in Alexandria, Egypt. So Trodros also has some traveling. Don't think that these popes don't interact, because usually in the West you think there's one pope, there's more than one, okay? So when they put these men in place in these religious establishments, they are known as elective monarchs. The second type of monarchy that um, still exists is comparable to what we called in the West divine right of kings, and those are absolute monarchies. So on the screen, you're seeing to your left a photo of the Sultan of Brunei, Hassan al Bolkiah, and to the right, Africa's only remaining absolute monarch, Mizwati III of Eswatini, formerly Swahili, which is said to be the size of the state of Rhode Island, but 30+% of its population has HIV/AIDS. Um, Absolute monarch means that these people can dissolve their parliaments or body of politicians at any time, and they have absolute power. That is what an absolute monarch is. And to my knowledge, Miss Wadi has used those absolute powers to dissolve the governing bodies in Eswatini. Maybe once that I know of, maybe more than once. So that's what they are. You can look it up. There are 6 absolute monarchs, and these two are the most commonly discussed in royal circles. Okay. The third type of monarchy, which you will see usually in Europe, because all European countries practice what's called the constitutional monarch, which means they are more so figureheads and historical rather than having powers. You all are aware of the current constitutional monarch of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that would be King Charles III. So I want to introduce you to some that you may not be familiar with. To your left is King William Alexander of the Netherlands. He is the first male king of the Netherlands with a queen consort, which is his Argentine wife, Queen Maxima, in 134 years. So for 134 years until his mother, Queen Beatrix, abdicated the throne, 2013, 2014. It was one of those two. I can't think of it off the bat because this is a free talk. The Netherlands only had queens and prince consorts. So his mother was queen starting in 1980 after her mother, Queen Juliana, abdicated. And Juliana took the throne after her mother, Queen Wilhelmina, who was coincidentally queen at the same time as Queen Victoria of Great Britain and Grand Duchess Charlotte of Luxembourg, because Luxembourg is a grand duchy instead of using the terms king and queen. So William Alexander is the first constitutional monarch king. His mother had to take the title princess again because in the country of the Netherlands, by law, if that's how they have theirs written, if you abdicate the throne, you go back to the title of prince or princess. So if William Alexander ever abdicated in favor of his daughter Katerina Amalia, he would have to take the title prince again, which we don't know if that's going to happen because Katerina Amalia is maybe 21 years old. She's still fairly young and in college. So though Beatrix, who is now Princess Beatrix again, will still get a state funeral because she was the sovereign. It's just how it works in Europe. Okay, the one to the right you are all seeing is King Felipe of Spain. King Felipe took the throne some years ago after his father Juan Carlos abdicated in his favor. There's a lot of scandal there. I'll let you look it up. And Felipe's heir is Princess Leonor, who's currently getting her military training. So she's going to be the future queen with also a prince consort like Katerina Amalia of the Netherlands. So the thing with constitutional monarchies being figureheads is that some things come out of properties that they own with their own money, and some things are taxpayer funded. And because constitutional monarchs use taxpayer funds for certain things, this varies based on European countries. You are subject to answering in court to taxpayers, okay? So, therefore, you have to have certain permissions to be married into the families. I'll give you an example. King William Alexander at the time had a brother. He has three brothers. Prince Constantine is still alive. He's the baby brother. His wife Prince Laurentine. But he had a brother who's the second child, the late Prince Johann Friso, which they just called Prince Friso. Prince Friso's marriage to Princess Mabel was controversial because Princess Mabel was associated with a Dutch man who was believed to have been one of the biggest drug dealers on the continent of Europe at that time, or what they thought was one of the biggest drug pushers. Again, if you're listening and you're from Europe, correct me if I'm wrong. Parliament did not and could not and did not want to sign off on that marriage. Therefore, their two daughters could not take the term prince and princess for that reason, or they weren't given concessions for that reason. The same could be said of Prince Louis of Luxembourg, who had whose first son was born out of wedlock to his now ex-wife Princess Tessie. Therefore, Tessie could not be called princess at first and had to be instead take the name Tessie de Nassau. And their children had to take the name de Nassau until finally Grand Duke Henri, who at the time was Luxembourg's Grand Duke, he just gave up power October of this year, his constitutional seat to his son, Prince Guillaume, who's now Grand Duke Guillaume. Waited a couple of years until after both of the boys were born, his first two grandchildren, to give them the title prince. They now have that title. Why are these things important, and why am I giving you this lesson? When you are marrying into royal families, there are certain protocols that have to happen, right? So here's the image. You're seeing images on the screen, and two different screens will come up. If this does not look familiar, this is called the Amalienburg Palace. This is the official palace, because all the constitutional monarchs have various palaces. Y'all know this with King Charles. There's Buckingham Palace, which I think he works out of that palace only. Then he lives in Clarence House, unless he's visiting Sandringham for Christmas or Balmoral in Scotland for the summer. Okay. But they all have official palaces. For the Danish, this would be Amalienburg. Okay? So the images you're seeing is of that palace. Okay? The constitutional monarch of that country currently, as of January 2024, is King Frederick, and his Australian-born wife, Queen Mary, who at the time was Princess Mary when they married in 2004. Okay, Frederick met Mary at a bar in Sydney, Australia. She was born Mary Donaldson. She was born in Australia to immigrants from Scotland. Because, of course, if you go look at the videos, her father wore a kilt when he walked her down the aisle. Unfortunately, Queen Mary's mother passed away at a difficult time in her adulthood. I'm not sure why. I think it was of cancer, so she wasn't at the wedding and didn't live to see her daughter become Princess of Denmark and subsequently Queen. Their four children are Prince Christian, who is the heir presumptive, because of course there's a law in Denmark. If you are a male that takes the throne, you must have the name Frederick or Christian. So their firstborn was Christian. You'll see him there. He's the tallest child. Their secondborn is Princess Isabella. Then they had twins in 2011, Princess Josephine and Prince Vincent. And you see them all. That's the day that Frederick was officially sworn in as king, and after his mother had signed the official documents of abdication. I'm going to take this back to Princess. Now I'm not say Princess because she's now Queen. I don't know why I keep calling her Princess. It hasn't set in because I've kept up with the royal families that Mary is Queen. Queen Mary, unlike Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, because Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, I think, worked for a Dutch bank. So when she went to meet at the time Queen Beatrix, she could already speak fluent Dutch. Ignore Sugar because she's going to do this where she interrupts. I apologize for the interruption. Let's get back to Queen Mary. Back when Queen Mary was Mary Donaldson, okay, from Australia. And Frederick, who was the crown prince at the time, made his intentions known that this was who he was going to marry. Several steps happen when you're going to take the title of prince and princess. Listen to me close, because when you know this and go study this, you can go study this with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry as well. Of course, America's an English-speaking country, so Meghan didn't have much to learn other than British and high etiquette and royal etiquette and English history, okay? British history, history of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Okay, Wales as well, for obvious reasons, okay? So, there are videos, because I saw them at the time in the early 2000s, in which, at the time, Mary Donaldson was shown how to walk elegantly like a royal, because you're going to attend state banquets with other royals and with heads of state. So you would have to have etiquette according to each individual country, what you could not serve. Of course, you wouldn't serve any pork at all if a Muslim or Jewish leader was coming, for obvious reasons. You probably would not serve beef to any prime minister of India because the cow is sacred, right? So you're learning all of these things. I'm not saying the tapes are saying this. What I'm saying is they recorded her when she was still Mary Donaldson, taking different classes on etiquette. She had to learn to speak Danish fluently because she didn't know that language. Whereas Frederick, being a prince and growing up a prince, of course, had to learn several languages, including English. I've seen footage of him speaking. Frederick knows English, okay? Of course, Mary does because she grew up in Australia. The point is that there are levels to this. First, you're going to go meet the sovereign. So, Mary at some point was taken in private with Frederick to meet, at the time, Queen Margrethe. Somewhere along the line, they got some type of permission for that wedding to go forward. That permission has to be given because when you take the title of prince or princess or you're marrying into these royal families, those weddings photos will show up all around the world saying this person married this royal person, and it's televised. Think about it. This is why Meghan Markle, who was also born in the United States, wedding fully televised because Prince Harry at the time was the grandson of the sovereign. So first you're going to go in private to some royal residence and meet with the sovereign. The fact that this chick in Texas was not taken to a Muhlenberg palace to physically meet and sit with King Frederick should have been her first clue. Now I'm going to put King Carl Gustaf of Sweden on the screen. And you would say, what does the royal family of Sweden have to do with Denmark? I'm going to tell you, and this is before Frederick became king, okay? King Carl Gustaf of Sweden set the stage for what King Charles III is doing in Great Britain and had planned to do when he was still the Prince of Wales, okay? King Carl Gustaf has 3 children, Crown Princess Victoria, who initially was not going to take the throne, but the law in Sweden changed months after her brother Prince Carl Philip was born, because he was born to be king. But then they changed what's called primogeniture, which I want you all to look that up because I'm not going to tell you everything, and decided that since she was the oldest child, her being a female no longer barred her from being queen in the future. So there's Crown Princess Victoria, then Prince Carl Philip, and Princess Madeline. Okay? Couple years ago, King Carl Gustaf, though he allowed his son, for obvious reasons, being the son of a sovereign, and his son's wife, Princess Sophia, so Carl Philip being the second child, with his wife Sophia and all their sons, they just had a daughter finally, 4 kids. And Princess Madeline and her husband, who chose to take no titles at all, came back and said that although his grandchildren could keep the title of prince and princess, they could no longer be called his or her royal highness. Here's why that distinction is important. His and her royal highness means that the state funds some aspects of your life. By stripping them of their his and her royal highness, he said they now had to go out and forge their own identities and pay their own bills and forge their own paths in the future. Only Crown Princess Victoria's 2 children, Princess Estelle, who is the heir presumptive once Victoria becomes queen, and Prince Oscar can keep the title of his and her royal highness, meaning that they are still being somewhat subsidized by the taxpayer. Okay? Now, what does that have to do with Denmark? When Queen Margrethe was the Queen of Denmark, shortly before her son became king when she abdicated, because she has 2 sons, there's Frederick, okay, and then he married Mary. Then there's Prince Joachim, who's been married twice. First to his wife, who's like, I think, 25, ex-wife, who was Princess Alexandra, who's now Countess Alexandra. And then his second wife, Marie. While Joachim and Marie can keep their title, all of their children have been stripped of their prince and princess and now can only be called Count or Countess of Montpezat, which is the title that came with her husband, Prince Henrik. Again, y'all want to know, what does this have to do with this woman in Dallas who thought she was dating a Danish prince? All of this, if you know these things about Denmark, it will give you a window into why she should have known she was being scammed. Because when Queen Margrethe removed the prince and princess titles, because she took it farther than King Carl Gustaf of Sweden, he didn't remove the title of prince and princess from the grandchildren of Carl Philip and Madeline. He just removed the his and her royal highness. They can still be called prince and princess, but they have to go work for themselves and make their own money in the future instead of living off the taxpayer. Queen Margrethe took it farther and said, no, you can't even be prince and princess anymore. If you are not the direct children of the sovereign, you cannot carry the title of prince and princess. You are now counts or countesses. Even Queen Mary, when she was still just the crown princess at the time, said, because people blamed her because various reasons, that stuff y'all can look up, the whole rift, that they were also going to examine their own children's titles in time. This is what that means. I take that to mean that once Prince Christian, their eldest, marries, there's no guarantee that Princess Isabella, Princess, what's her name, Josephine, and Prince Vincent will keep their prince and princess titles in the future. And if they did, there's no guarantee that their kids will take prince and princess titles, because all European houses are slim in their monarchies. There's even a call for Prince Charles to strip Harry and Meghan of the Duchy of Sussex because they're not full-time royals. And technically that can be done because they're not working royals. The reason the House of Bernadotte, which is Sweden, and of course the Danish royal house are doing this is to slim down the monarchy. Once Christian have children, Again, y'all would ask, what does this have to do with the chick in Dallas? Okay, I'm going to go back to Mary when Mary was Mary Donaldson and not Princess and now Queen Mary. First, you're going to go to the royal residence, likely Amalienborg Palace. And I'm talking off topic, but I'm getting y'all to the point here. Then after that, there's a press conference where you're going to sit in a room with reporters. You're going to show off the engagement ring, talk about how you met behind the scenes that was rehearsed so that you know what to say and what not to say. To study and learn this, go look at the royal announcement of Harry and Meghan. There's a way, a time that all this has to be done, okay? These things are planned behind the scenes. Go look back at the engagement of the Prince and Princess of Wales, which is William and at the time Kate Middleton. There's a time that you have to do this, and it has to be done a certain way. Because all these reporters are brought into each of these palaces to take pictures and ask questions, okay? That should have been that woman's first clue in Dallas when she was not taken to the Amalienborg Palace. Presumably, if that was going to be the place where she would have met King Frederick, okay? Because he's the current monarch, unless at the time she married him, Margrethe was still queen. You're going to go meet the sovereign first. Then it's going to, once the approvals come through for the marriage, the blessing and the consent, then you're going to get that press conference showing off the engagement. Third step is that whatever you need to learn to be sovereign, that's what you're going to learn. You're going to get fluent in the language as soon as possible. You're going to go with your royal fiancé around the different regions and do charitable work because they're trying to figure out which patronages you're going to take. These things are all starting to be decided. Meanwhile, the wedding is being planned by courtiers inside of the palaces. Okay? The menu and everything. You ain't going to have a lot of say so because when that happens, different people may come from royal houses. It all varies based on your view in the order, okay? Somewhere along that line, and I think different families do it differently, the royal announcement is going to go on the physical official page and then some of their social medias, because some royal families do have their own royal Twitter and they do have their own Facebook. It is at this point where if you're going to take the title of princess in the future or prince because you married into a family, you can no longer have your personal Twitter. You now have to monitor what you say because you're in that constitutional monarchy. When that didn't happen, that should have been a clue to her. When she was not taken by some courtiers and by special people set aside to teach her the Danish language, Danish history, royal etiquette and culture, should have known. Okay. The fourth step is the wedding. Pictures are going to go all over the world. The press from all over the world is invited. And the ones who don't, they'll get pictures. There's no way you sitting in Dallas, Texas, gonna marry a Danish prince and those pictures aren't in newspapers all over the world. USA Today, New York Times, at a minimum, would have been all over that. Every major newspaper in every major region and city would have discussed, and even if it's a small article, that this black girl from Dallas, Texas married this Danish prince. What I'm saying is, in Denmark, most of the time, if you're that close to the royal family, to carry that title, if you're not a working royal, then what are you? Because Denmark is slimming down its monarchy. And he told you this lie to swindle you out of money at a time when Denmark has admitted it's slimming down its monarchy. We don't even know that Frederick's 3 youngest children will even keep the title of prince and princess. That's their deal. Because once Prince Christian gets married, then his children are the heirs to the throne. And they have their heirs after that. So that's the thing. Somewhere on the Kongen Huset, they would have announced this marriage. A Danish prince wouldn't pawn a watch, ma'am, okay? He wouldn't. Why would he? Because your finances have to be carefully monitored, because some aspects of your life, particularly security, if you actually had a real royal wedding, that had to have come out of taxpayers' money. But see, you wouldn't know that because you fell for this deception. I talked in circles, right? But I'm telling you all why she could have easily avoided this scam. Number one, she should have went to Google. At the top of Google's page, on that first page, not the very top, but if you scroll just a little, you're going to see the Kongen Huset. And the Kongen Huset is going to tell you who's actually a part of the royal family and who's a working royal. When she found out this dude was not a prince, that should have been her first clue. The point is, when you're married into royal families, you need to know the difference between the 3 types of monarchy and what happens, since y'all want to push European narratives in constitutional monarchies. I blame fairy tales when they were changed, because fairy tales were originally dark and had lessons behind them. But as the Industrial Revolution came to be, they softened fairy tales to placate the growing middle class families and people who were becoming rich. Now you think this handsome someone with all these connections is going to sweep you off your feet and take you somewhere. Obviously, a con artist is going to make some concessions to get you to give up stuff. And if he took you to Monaco, which I can believe, it didn't cross you when you didn't meet the sovereign prince, which is Prince Albert, and his wife, Princess Charlene, like, because Prince Albert is known in Monaco to mix, the sovereign prince to mix with other royal families. Go ahead. I don't know a lot, right? If you're like me and I study etiquette and royal protocol, so some people, you being too harsh, this is boring, what does this have to do with anything? You have to understand the different types of monarchies, and you have to understand how fast they're moving at removing prince and princess titles, and what that entails to know who's related to who. She didn't stop to think to ask him of his relations. Well, love makes you do some crazy things. Here's the thing about that. I'm at best apathetic of her situation, because if she had done a rudimentary search, she would have found out that was a lie. The addictions this man have, and it's not to say that if you're royal, you don't have issues or addictions. They're going to give a simple statement from some of their courtiers within the palace, and they're going to leave it alone. Prince Harry did the unthinkable with the book Spare, and he revealed way too much that in any other royal family, you don't talk about that stuff in public. You deal with that in private, and then if you have to go answer the courts, you do that as it comes. Now, can royal families be asked to go to court? Yes. An example of that is King Albert of Belgium, who was sued by a woman named Delphine Boyle, who wanted a blood test to prove that she's his illegitimate child. When that blood test came out a couple of years ago, stating that Delphine is indeed his biological daughter, the court ordered him to give her the title of princess and give her son and daughter the title of prince and princess as well, to make up for that. That's how the Belgians did it. This stuff, there's levels to this stuff. You got to study it by family. But all Europeans are constitutional monarchies, and things fall within a certain pecking order with constitutional monarchies. Y'all gotta wake up to these silly fairy tales you believe, because she got swindled based on what she wanted to believe instead of reality. Look, I know this was a boring history lesson, and some people say, oh, you showing off. And for the record, if you come to my page talking trash, I'm going to dump you, okay? I'm gonna block you. This was not about me showing off. This is about me letting you know when people come up with royal scams, how you can protect yourself and look this stuff up. Do they come from an elective monarch? Likely not, because those are religious establishments. Do they come from an absolute monarch? I am an African prince, because that was going around for a while, and some of those guys could really be that. But take their name and look it up and test it and see if someone in that country knows that person and has photos of it. Constitutional monarchs are a little bit more open, and therefore you are going to know more about them based on their official pages. Hint, hint, the Danish royal family. There's not enough love in the world for you to not research this. All right, I want to thank y'all for listening. I want to thank y'all for stopping by. This is the boring aspect of the Danish deception, but I wanted to break this down. Feel free to go look at the videos if you can find them of Queen Mary. I still want to call her princess, who at the time was Mary Donaldson from Australia, when she was learning royal etiquette before the wedding and how to live as a royal. All right. Stop falling for this stuff. The fairy tales you all were sold here in the West, the stuff ain't real. Let it go. and start empowering yourself by doing more research instead of believing stuff. I'm done laughing at her because I did laugh. But I can't have empathy for that type of willful stupidity, because in all actuality, that was willfully stupid moves. All of these people gave this man money and her family, and nobody thought to research this. I'll leave it up to y'all. But see, before I go, let me say this. It's not uncommon for a black person to marry into a royal family, okay? But let's keep it frank. With the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, right? I feel that people worship Meghan Markle only because of her light skin. Was in 1999, 2000, Angela Brown, who we now know as Princess Angela of Liechtenstein, married a son of Prince Hans Adam II, which is Prince Maximilian. You see their wedding from many years ago, but see, then you see to the right their only child, Prince Alphonse, who is said to live a very private life. But Angela was born in Panama to Panamanian parents who moved her to the States, I think, when she was 5 years old. So she had lived most of her life in the United States until she met Prince Maximilian. If you compare her and Meghan Markle, it's no, in this country with its colorism, it's no mystery why no one talks about her. We know why. See, you all believe these convenient fairy tales, and this is why she got herself into this. I know people are laughing, but in all actuality, if you bother to do the rudimentary research, you would know these things. All right, that's my boring take on this. I know people are going to come for me. I don't care. If you make stupid comments, they will get blocked. All right, hope y'all are enjoying your holiday. Thanks. Have a great one.